It has been kind of a strange and difficult week. It began as we learned of the death of actor-comedian Robin Williams by his own hand. Indeed, it is in fact remarkable to me how it seems the whole nation has been grieving his passing all week. In fact, there were 2 articles about it in the Shreveport Times just this morning. Now, as some of you know, I am in no way enamored of celebrity for celebrity's sake. I don't read People magazine. I don't get into all that stuff, and I'm just generally bored by the lives of the rich and famous. But it seems to me that Robin Williams was something quite special. Though his comedy was not always suitable for all audiences, he was clearly a comic genius, one of those rare individuals able to walk that very fine line between comedy and tragedy, able to bring together laughter from tears and tears from laughter. Moreover, based upon our conversation at the Brown Bag Bible Study on Thursday, his appeal was apparently intergenerational. The fact that he took his own life has prompted a national conversation about suicide. The various medias are filled with articles expressing a whole host of opinions. Indeed, there was a cartoon on the editorial page of the Shreveport Times on Friday which clearly suggested that what killed Robin Williams was depression and alcohol, the implication being that his suicide was inevitable. I must tell you that I disagree with that sentiment. I believe that what killed Robin Williams was his own choice. It was a tragic choice, but it was his choice nonetheless. It was not inevitable. He could have made a different decision, and we would wish that he had. At the same time, though life is difficult for all of us, I am certain that some souls are more tortured than others. Depression is a real thing. And ultimately, no one can know the depths of another's pain. And thus, none of us are equipped to judge. But I am sure of one thing. If there is, in fact, a wideness in God's mercy, and I believe that there is, then surely there is room in the kingdom for those driven by despair to this ultimate act, Roman Catholic theology notwithstanding. But anyway, that's how the week began. By the middle of the week, I believe many of us had finally begun to understand the depth and breadth and horror that has claimed northern Iraq, where an army of Sunni Muslims have declared war on anyone who disagrees with them. Christians, certainly. I'm even told that there have been crucifixions. But also Shia Muslims, and also other religious groups, among them a small and ancient monotheistic group pinned down on that mountain. About 30,000 of them. They're called Yazidis, I believe. They're an ancient combination of Judaism, Christianity, and Zoroastrianism. But nobody is being spared. According to the news reports, many have been brutally murdered, men and women and children. And y'all, I've read some stuff that I just can't say out loud. Reportedly, they are given the ultimatum, convert or die. I am told that there are as many as 1 million refugees, people just flat running for their lives. It is incomprehensible to us, is it not? It is as if we have gone through the looking glass and come out the other side and landed in the Middle Ages. It is also what happens when any people of any religion make enemies of anyone with whom they disagree. The inevitable consequences of religious fanaticism, which is always wrong. Always. Moreover, it is ironic at least that all of this morning's readings in fact point to the notion that we all worship the same God. We all worship the same God. The Archbishop of Canterbury and our own presiding bishop have declared that today be a day of prayer in light of this crisis, and so it is. By the way, I am also told, I did not know this, that most of the Christians in Iraq are in fact Roman Catholics. There is only one Anglican church in the whole country. It's in Baghdad. You know what it's called? St. George's. It has been bombed 5 times in the last 2 years. So we need to pray for our brothers and sisters in Iraq, and we will do so this morning. So as you might imagine, by the end of the week, I was ready for a break. Looking forward to our vacation, which begins in about 4 hours. Okay? But on Thursday night, I got one of those phone calls that we all dread. And I learned that our dear friend Jimmy Disbro, a relatively young man in apparent good health, had been found dead in his mom's house. His mom was Bee Disbro, who many of you remember, beloved parishioner and friend, who passed from this earth several years ago. We had her service right here. And in the process of her sickness and that service, we got to know several of her children pretty well. And Jimmy was among the ones, especially Denise and I got to know very well. And we've kept up ever since. Jimmy was a kind, sweet, sensitive man who we saw occasionally and who always sent us text messages on holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas. It just seemed like they came out of nowhere. He was a waiter at our favorite restaurant, and he always comped us an hors d'oeuvre, or a dessert, or a bottle of wine. He died way too soon. We had his service yesterday, standing room here at St. George's yesterday, y'all. My wife did a marvelous job on the reception across the way. It was a sad day at St. George's, but a marvelous day as well. Jimmy Disbro, rest in peace. And so it's been a tough week. And after all that, I go to this morning's gospel thinking, I could really use some good news. Right? And I went to the text and I just kept staring at it. It was familiar. I had seen it before. Indeed, every 3 years when it comes around in the lectionary cycle, I ask myself the same question, why is that in there? Couldn't they found something better for me to preach on this morning? You can't sugarcoat it. You can't explain it away. You can't dress it up. It is Jesus at His worst. It is. He is grumpy, he is grouchy, he is irritable, he is downright rude. Moreover, he manages to call this poor woman with a sick daughter a dog. So I'm thinking to myself, how in the Lord am I going to preach this? I was going to preach on the New Testament reading, but it wasn't all that great either. Now, I was resigned not to apologize for Jesus. He doesn't need my help. And in fact, it occurred to me that it might actually do us some good to get a glimpse of His human side. To get a glimpse of the fact that He really could have a bad day. Christian theology teaches that He's fully human and fully divine, but most of us modern Christians are so committed to His divinity, to His lordship, that we behold Him in His humanity hardly at all. It is in my mind, one of the serious flaws of the modern church. But at any rate, it's somewhere in my reflection of all this, it occurred to me that Jesus is not the star of this show at all. No, the star of this show is the Canaanite woman. Now, she's got 2 strikes against her right off the bat. First, she's a woman. And second, she's not even Jewish. Y'all, this was the ancient Middle East. It was worse then than it is now. Women were property. Women were chattel. They had no rights at all. They were to be seen and not heard. It occurs to me that perhaps that's why Jesus was so grumpy. I don't know. Moreover, it would have been unthinkable for a proper Jew to have had a public conversation with a non-Jew at all. And yet here she comes, as bold as brass. And she doesn't give up, does she? She just keeps wailing on Jesus and wailing on Jesus, right? Every time he puts her off, she has a comeback. And so finally, she just wears him out. And I get this picture in my mind's eye. He looks at her, he's beat. You know? And I suspect he's got kind of a twinkle in his eye and perhaps a sardonic grin on his face. And he says, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish. Great is your faith." It's a quirky little story, but it has a great message. Great is your faith. Y'all, the older I get, the more I am absolutely convinced that faith is the key to everything. Not just here, not just assenting to the tenets of the Nicene Creed, oh no, but here, in our gut, in our hearts, and in our souls, to believe with everything we have that it's going to be all right. We used to have a theologian in seminary that used to say, because of Jesus, the end is always better than the beginning. It's going to be all right. That God is in control. Not to just believe it here, to trust it here. To trust God so completely that you say what needs saying and do what needs doing. Because you're fearless. Because you know that God is in control. That's what you need, you see, when you're having a tough week, isn't it? That's what you need when folks die. That's what you need when it seems as though the world is going to hell in a handbasket. When it seems the whole thing is coming apart at the seams. That's what you need when stuff starts to pile up on you. When one difficult day seems to follow another. When life itself seems to conspire against you. Paul McCartney wrote that all you need is love. Or was that George Harrison? I don't remember. One of them. But I also believe that all you need is faith. All you need is faith. All you really need is to trust God. Now, we don't come that way. We're not born with that. We have to learn how to do that throughout our lives. Learn to depend upon God. Learn to trust God. It is my conviction that it is the key to everything. To take God at His word. And to have a little faith. Amen.